The same procedural notes, which I will read through again. The evacuation procedure. In the event of having to evacuate the council chamber, please leave by one of the two exits at the rear of the chamber. Officers will be on hand to assist with people with disabilities. Mobile phones, may ask all members who have mobile phones with them to ensure that they switch off so they will not disturb the meeting. Item number 1, I want to comment now and inform you about Mr. Barry Gardner. It is with great sadness that I report the death of the former chairman of the County Council, Mr. Barry Gardner. Mr. Gardner served on the County Council from 1997 to 2013. He represented Narborough electoral division, was chairman of the County Council during the 2006 and 2007 municipal year. He served mainly on Scrutiny Committee relating to adult social care and health matters, the Development Control and Regulatory Board and the Standards Committee. I also have to report Mrs. Joan Snart. The members will be aware of the very sad passing of Mrs. Joan Snart, wife of David Snart, a past chairman and honorary alderman. Joan was a great support to David during his years chairman, and as a civic couple they were greatly respected. At this sad time, our thoughts and prayers are with David and his family as they come to terms with their loss. Would members join me, please, in silent tribute to Gary and Joan Snart? Thank you. Also, it has been drawn to my attention that Mr. David Bill had completed over 40 years of continuous service, having been first elected to the council in 1981. I'd invite members to join me in showing their appreciation of Mr. Bill's many years of continuous service within the authority. Thank you. Yeah. Did you want to respond?
Yes, please. That has come as a complete surprise, and I very much appreciate being mentioned in that way. Thank you, Chairman.
Thank you. You're welcome. Thank you. Carrying on, recent highlights. Since the council meeting in July, I have begun attend a number of events representing you, the County Council. A few highlights have been the unveiling of a green plaque for Jack Gardner, a former boxer from Market Harborough. Welcome the Earl and Countess of Wessex at Harborough Museum, and the Duke of Gloucester to the 1620 Manor House at Castle Donington-Lee Heath. Tomorrow I'll be in Hinckley to unveil a green plaque for Captain G, who was awarded a Victoria Cross in the First World War, as well as serving as a Member of Parliament for Bosworth. Thank you. Right, we move on to item agenda 2. I move the minutes of the meeting held on the 7th of July 2021, copies which have been circulated to members to be taken as read and confirmed. Could I call for a seconder, please?
Seconded, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you very much. Councillor Felton. Right, agenda 3, declarations of interest. I invite members who do wish to make declarations of interest in respect of items on the agenda for this meeting. I'm assuming that all members will wish to declare the personal interest in item 6A, the report of the Independent Remuneration Panel. Are there any other declarations? No? Thank you. Item number 4, questions asked under the Standing Order Rule 7, bracket 1, 2 and bracket 5. The questions rely set out in the order paper and will be taken as read and entered to the minutes. Are there any supplementaries to those questions? Mr. Bray. Thank you.
Yes, thank you, Chairman. And can I thank Ozzy for his reply and his explanation. Can I just ask him if he'd undertake to have a look at the job that's been done? Because I have to say, in my patch, there's still quite a lot of areas that are an eyesore. Cheers. Thank you, Chairman.
Thank you. Yeah.
Thank you, Chairman. Currently, Hinckley and Bosworth is in the process of being done, Councillor Bray.
Thank you very much, Councillor Shea. Thank you. Yes, Mrs. Hack, yes.
Thank you, Chairman. It identified in the response, thank you, Ozzy, for the response, that overall 574 applications were received late. I'm wondering whether or not those were foreseen delays. And secondly, it identifies in point 2 the vast majority of 1828 students, whether or not we just get clarity on the number, please.
Thank you, yes.
Thank you for your supplementary question, Councillor Hack. I'll arrange for a full and comprehensive written reply. Thank you.
Thank you. Right, we move on to agenda item 5 to receive the position statements from members of the Cabinet. The Leader. I will now invite the Leader to make his position statement. When the Leader has finished his statement, I'll invite Mr Mullaney and Mr Hunt as Leaders of the Opposition to speak first. If you wish to speak, please raise your hands and then we'll call you to speak. Leader, please. Thank you.
Chairman, thank you. You've got the position statement in front of you. I don't propose to read it all to you. It will form part of the record, and just to highlight one or two areas and then take questions from members, I think is in better use of the time. But just a few things. So, as you know, on the 15th of July, Boris Johnson, the Prime Minister, outlined his vision for delivering further so-called levelling up, and he spoke about county deals. So, obviously, this was of great interest to us. So, we've been working on a so-called county deal bid for ever since that, really, and we had to get the first bid in by, I think it was middle of August. So it's been a lot of hard work by a lot of people. My special thanks go obviously to the Chief here and Chris Tambini and the finance guys and Anne in Highways and Transportation, but also to Neil O'Brien, because at the time Neil O'Brien, as you know, was in the Prime Minister's Levelling Up unit in number 10. He's subsequently been promoted to the Parliamentary Under Secretary of State to Michael Gove, and he was very, very helpful in us getting the bid right, and hopefully we have got it right, because in my view, as I say, both deal for Leicestershire will be devolution of funding from government to allow us to build and shape our community.
Leader, is your microphone on?
Yeah,
Oh,
yes, it is. It's red.
Oh.
Without having to... How's that better, Chairman?
Yes, thank
Sorry
you.
about that. Without having to continuously bid for funding. So you can see the sort of things we're bidding for in my position statement. We're also bidding for children's social care to have the same opportunities as adult social care does. So it is a complex bid. And I want to thank people who also have helped me. So I've been to see all the Leicestershire MPs in London. it was actually Alberta who organised it, so I thank Alberta for that. And all the Leicestershire MPs are supportive of the bid, which really, really helps us. I've also spoken with the Conservative leaders of the district councils in Leicestershire, and I understand, although I've not been formally told, but I do understand that they have also written in support of our bid. If we can get the bid through the door, we'll need to be in the first wave, and I understand that most counties have bid or are bidding, but if we can get into the first wave, it'll be a real benefit for Leicestershire. Some of the problems we're struggling with at the moment on infrastructure, with the massive housing growth, which we all know we've got in Leicestershire. We're above the national average in terms of the numbers, so we really do need some money to make sure infrastructure follows the housing to help the district councils or borough councils with their local plans. Because my view is we're all in favour of growth and prosperity, but we're not in favour of building boxes on spine roads. We want housing which are homes for people in communities, and this sort of bid will help us with that. So we now wait till the end of October to see whether or not we qualify. Might even be November. You know, the government has a tendency to move things around. But when we get an offer, more work then starts straight away, because we've got to accept the offer to bid and then work with them for a period of months, maybe even a year, on a deal and see how it goes. But I think it is in the best interest of Leicestershire to be in a county deal. And as Neil O'Brien said, he said you can wait along all you like for a bus to come by and not get on it. This is the bus that's coming past Leicestershire, and we really do need to try and get on it to see if we can get a county deal. And I promise you we've done our best. And if we aren't accepted in the first wave, which I hope we are, let's hope we get in the second wave. But it is in all our best interests, irrespective of political party, because in my view this is in the best interests of the people of Leicestershire. A brief word about Freeport. Again, a lot of hard work. We've engaged consultants to work with the private sector on the development of the outline Freeport business case. I serve on it from Leicestershire. The chief and his team are the accountable body for the Freeport. We've employed Ernst & Young from Nottingham to be like independent people, because it's not only dealing with the likes of me and Robert Ashman, for instance, also on it from North West Leicestershire. There's the private sector who have been, they're different to us in the way they operate, through the cajoling and at all meeting and constant meeting, honestly constant meetings. Some of them, I don't think it's rude to say, are pretty mind-numbing, but through all those amount of meetings, we've now got an outline business case in, and again, I'm hopeful that we will get approved by the government to have a Freeport, because as it says in here, I truly believe if we get it, this will be a game changer certainly for the part of Leicestershire I represent, because I represent up against the airport. Trevor represents the rest of the airport, but the economic benefits to Leicestershire and say Loughborough and some of the the more disadvantaged areas in Loughborough will be game-changing. So I will continue the work on it. The chief will continue doing the accountable body work, and let's hope we can get this as well. And then the final one, I put it on my position statement because it's a personal one. It's in my division, and I had the opportunity, I was invited by the owners on Facebook to go and open their forest school a couple of weeks ago. It's based in a wood just outside Worthington. And it says here, forest schools are independently run and offer children excellent opportunities to build and enhance confidence with learning and practical skills. And I went there for the afternoon. It really was good. This is the sort of thing young children like to do, running around in a wood, sitting around campfires, tying knots, chopping wood and all that sort of stuff. It was really, really good to go. And I promised them I'd try and mention it in my position statement to highlight it, to encourage young children from my division to go there. Thank you, Chairman.
Thank you. Right, I'd like to now call on Mr Mullaney. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr Chairman. So in terms of the county deal, we firstly welcome the fact that this seems to put to an end the proposals to abolish the 7 districts and boroughs and create one unitary authority, which would have created unnecessary disruption at this difficult time and centralisation of decision making. Our Lib Dem group position has always been that Leicestershire is unfairly treated and gets a raw deal from the government, not only in terms of being the worst funded county council in the country, but also in terms of the police, fire, education and other services being funded below the national average. Therefore, any scheme that brings additional extra funding into the county is something that we would welcome, and if it does bring improvements to transport and other infrastructure, then we would welcome that as well. In terms of reservations to the plans, as a group, we don't support elected mayors, so that is something that we would have a reservation about. Also, I do notice there is the option for a business rate supplement of 2% being charged to businesses as a potential charge, which again is a concern at this time. As we emerge from COVID, it's a difficult time for businesses, and putting additional costs on like that is a potential concern. So we welcome it. I think we realise that this is not fully levelling up Leicestershire. It's not delivering the kind of extra investment that we would get if it was true fair funding. But in terms of bringing some extra money into Leicestershire, then we, at this stage, welcome it, albeit with some reservations. Thank you.
Thank you. Is there any members wish to speak? Yes, sorry, Mr. Hunt, yes.
Thank you, Chair. The Labour Group don't think much of this deal. And I think if you look at the dates, the speech made by the Prime Minister was his Coventry speech, if you remember, and it was in the middle of the holidays, and you had, I think, about a month which to come to deliver a paper. Now, I happened to be listening to Andy Street a few days after that. I think he's being interviewed on Radio 4, and like you, like leader of our council, he's a man of integrity and shrewdness. And he was asked successively, what was the Prime Minister proposing? And he kept on saying, it was a fine speech, he made some very good points, I'm sure we will learn more later. Well, we've learned, unfortunately, through the necessity of having put a paper forward in such a short time. I think our problems are, first of all, that it's not devolution. It's simply taking taxpayers' money, hopefully a little bit more taxpayers' money than we've had in the past, and putting it in the hands of one person with added cost for running that office. It doesn't... It removes some decision-making from the districts, particularly at local plan level. But that's something that districts will have to respond to. But it isn't a move towards strategic decision-making on the key issues that infrastructure money would be for, namely housing and transport. And we think that it's essential that we do take a county-wide, in a genuine sense, particularly when we're looking at transport and indeed housing, because transport doesn't stop at the city boundary, it doesn't stop at the county boundary. And we have paper after paper going through Cabinet where we're saying, well, we don't agree with the city on this, or we don't agree with the city on that, or the city is saying the opposite towards us, because there is no current central planning of transport across this wider county. And that, I think, is the biggest structural flaw in the proposal. But I do understand that the administration has to put in a bid, has to take the opportunity of getting more money for Leicestershire if we can, and that has no doubt forced the pace and delivered this particular position paper. And I'd just like to finish by thanking Nick for all his work on, and that of the Chief Executive, on the Freeport. Our concerns in the northwest and north of Leicestershire are about transport and housing on those issues, which come back to where we started. Thank you.
Thank you. I'll call upon the leader, Councillor Rushton, please.
Yeah, thank you. To Michael, thank you for... Sorry.
Sorry, Mr.
What?
Bracken.
I'm not on. Oh, sorry.
Oh.
Thanks, Jay. It was just to sort of confirm the county deal doesn't replace fair funding. Fair funding runs alongside the county deal, so these are two streams that we're looking at. The leader's statement has picked up, it covers the housing growth figures that we predict for the county. It doesn't touch on the fact that our population is predicted to grow by 17% over the next 20 years. So I think what the ask is on the county deal at the moment is £1 billion. It's in two strands, 25 million over 30 years. That gives us those devolved powers really to help shape our county. But it also gives us 50 million over a 5-year period, which will help us put the infrastructure in place, transport settlement, that will then support our district and borough local plans. They're all coming through. We have to develop this county, we have to put the infrastructure in place, and if we can get this, it'll be a good way to help us do that. So, thank you, Chair.
Thank you. Thank you. Mr. Rush. Oh, no. Yes, Mrs. Taylor.
Thank you, Chairman. Just to pick up on that last point by Mr. Hunt, if we do get the county deal, we'll be working very closely with the districts, with Rutland County Council and with the City Council, because as rightly pointed out, transport doesn't stop at our boundary and start at Leicester City. So we've already spoken to those local authorities, and as the leader's already said, spoken to the districts. So there will be some collaboration between the locality across LLR. So just to reassure you that will happen. We won't be working in silo, and we will be working in partnership going forward. Thank you.
Thank you. Anybody else? No? Councillor Rushton, please. Thank you.
Thank you, Chairman. Thank you, Michael, for your welcome with reservations. And I think, Max, even you're not completely opposed. You know where we are and you know we've got to do it, so thank you generally. Can I just reiterate, and I probably should have said it straight away in the speech because you highlighted yourself, this is not about reorganisation, not about reorganisation. That is one of the things that makes it so attractive to all members, that it doesn't involve fiddling around with district councils or whatever, and can go ahead without taking any of their powers. So one of the things I thought, if we do get some additional powers, we will need to work with district councils. So one of the ideas I've had is to beef up the MAG. Now, the MAG is the Members Advisory Group, and I think, Stuart, you serve on it. Who serves on it? David serves on it. It's a good place where the leaders meet up with officers of support to talk about the strategic issues that this county is going to face with the massive amount of growth we're going to have to experience. Lee's already told you that this won't cure fair funding. The fair funding battle goes on. And if we can't get 100% fair funding, we need to persuade the government that there's some of us, and Leicestershire is always one of them, that are so poorly funded, they ought to find some exceptional money to help us out. No to mayors, you said, Michael. Well, admittedly, I'm not a big fan of mayors, but if we want to be in the first wave, if we want to tick every box, if we want to do the best for the people of Leicestershire, I was advised that we should offer up an directly elected mayor for Leicestershire. You will pick one, Labour will pick one, we'll pick one. Be a separate person on the ballot paper. So you'll still elect your county councillors, then you'll have a directly elected mayor. And I would imagine it'll be up for negotiation how he runs his mayoral stuff. But you can see how City Mayor runs his. So he has a directly elected City Mayor, he has a couple of what he calls deputy mayors. Then he has other assistants under, which are type of like the cabinet. It's all up for negotiation, Michael, going forward. Do you want to call him a mayor? Do you want to call him a governor? Do you want to call? You can call him what you like, but it's a directly elected person that we need to have to tick all the boxes to get it through the door. And that is why I was willing to swallow it. And it wasn't easy, and it's certainly not easy with everyone on my side, let alone on yours. We've been told about the extra money, Max, which we're going to get in. And also you mentioned transport. And one of the things when discussions with Neil, when we were talking about this, to get the bid in and work on it together, is these so-called sidecar deals. So if we get a load of transport powers, or health powers, or public health powers, I can offer those to other local authorities. So on transport, you definitely want to work with the mayor, because all the roads come in and out of the blooming city. I've spoken to Peter about it. I've spoken to Oliver in Rutland. He's super interested in some additional transport powers or some health powers. But let's get them first. Let's look the government in the eye, what the deal is. Let's negotiate with them. And then when we've got them, then we can do the deals with SBS in the city and Oliver in Rutland. Thank you, Chairman.
Thank you. Right, we move on then to the lead member for resources. Could I take Mrs Radford first? Would you mind?
No.
Yeah, yeah.
Thank you, Chair. Good afternoon, members, and also honorary aldermen as well. Good afternoon. Members, the County Council starts our annual budgeting exercise in September. In line with previous years, a proposed medium-term financial strategy. You all right over there, Jeff?
Yeah, sorry, I was just...
That's okay.
Get my name on the list, please.
Okay, thank you. Will be presented to Cabinet in December, with the Chancellor's recent announcement that the 3-year spending review and autumn budget will be presented on the 27th of October. This is an opportune time to provide an update to this Council. The Chancellor has an enviable position with uncertain income levels due to the economic recovery, post-COVID cost pressures and an ambitious improvement agenda, including levelling up. I can empathise with his predicament. Locally, income tax has held up better than we feared for both council tax and business rates, although we are not out of the woods yet. It will be Christmas before the government announce our settlement and permissible levels of council tax increases. The 3-year settlement is very welcome, although the uncertainty that it would usually offer is being overshadowed by the adult social care reforms. Having movement in adult social care is of course welcome, although we wait for the detail before making a judgment. One thing we know for certain is that this is not a silver bullet, and cost pressures will continue from across the whole of social care, from children through working age adults into old age. It is apparent that the impact of COVID will be long lasting. These are being compounded by the disruption to global supply chains within construction, transport and utilities, and we're seeing eye-watering cost increases. Even if these inflationary pressures are as short-lived as hoped, they represent a stepped increase in our cost base. It would be remiss of me today not to mention the overspend in adult social care. The service is being caught between the health services needs to expedite discharges, a provider market that needs to reshape. Mrs Radford will say more about the key reason the Council is forecast to overspend by 12 million this year, although I understand that she can also share some positive progress. The overspend has attracted some recent media coverage, but this is a reflection that we have declared the problem early rather than Leicestershire having a unique problem. This is evidenced by the flurry of similar announcements that other councils have made over the last 7 days. The extensive pressures that we face pre-pandemic continue. Children's social care and special educational needs are key drivers of cost, and there is little news at the moment on their respective reforms. Capital investment has been a growing pressure for several years, and the expenditure undoubtedly benefits the services provided in Leicestershire, and investor save schemes have been a key part of our financial strategy. However, the scale of demand for infrastructure investment is unprecedented. This is vital investment that allows the county to continue to grow, ensuring new communities have the right facilities and access to public services, but it comes with a price. As a council, we have bucked the national trend and avoided new borrowing for several years. This approach has reduced the need for saving to be found, but the demands are such that we now need to consider capital as another pressure on the revenue budget. As a low-funded authority, surely not, I hear you all say, it is vital that we are realistic about what we can do, but equally important that we can take on and maximise opportunities such as the Freeport and the county deal when they present themselves. This is what we're doing. It is also vital we continue to push for fair funding. The leader has spoken openly about a broken funding system for local government, out of touch and in need of fixing. The report by the Onward think tank, Fair Funding, Levelling Up for Local Government Finances, authored by our very own Chris Tambini, is our latest input into the national debate. We continue to have good support from all our local MPs, and we will push for reform and a fair deal for Leicestershire residents. I can confirm that the Prime Minister and the Chancellor are aware that we are the lowest funded county authority in England, having met them during their recent visit to the county. When the MTFS is updated, the challenges and uncertainties we are facing will be set out. This will be a hugely challenging budget round with national finances under huge pressure, coupled with rising demand and costs for nearly all our services. Even against the backdrop, I am confident that we will be setting a sound MTFS. Finally, I'd like to end on sharing 2 items of positive news. Firstly, the Health and Safety and Wellbeing Service have achieved the ISO 45001 certification. ISO 45001 is an international standard for occupational health and safety management, which demonstrates best practice in health and safety management by using a structured framework of policies, processes and control. The Health and Safety and Wellbeing Service received certification following an external audit, with the auditor praising the team on the high standard of work presented, and they issued the certificate without a single recommendation for improvement or non-conformities, a rare achievement indeed. As part of the certification process, the Health and Safety team have created a series of ISO 45001 guidance documents, and these will now form the Council's Health and Safety Management System. All managers have a part to play in implementing processes and procedures to ensure they are managing health and safety to this new standard. Secondly, I've mentioned tomorrow I welcome 80 delegates to the Midlands Park Forum Conference at Century Theatre in Snibston Colliery Park in Colville. With its theme of green heritage, so many of the topics on the day are demonstrated at this site. Snibston Colliery was founded by George Stephenson, the father of the railways, and he described the colliery as the most profitable enterprise I ever took. The colliery site closed in 1986 and was acquired by Leicestershire County Council and then regenerated, first as a museum and secondly with a £3.5 million investment in 2020 as Snibston Colliery Park. On a recent visit, I saw the heritage artefacts as well as the site encouraging engagement with the site by families with a fantastic new play area, cafe and studio space. Within the wider country park on the former colliery spoil tip, we have created 4 kilometres of blue-grade mountain bike trails for those visitors preferring a gentle experience. The site also has fishing lakes, a Victoria Arboretum, wildflower meadows and woodlands to walk in. It also offers fantastic views over the countryside and also the town. I encourage all of you to visit our 18 country parks that cover over 500 hectares of land across the county. Thank you for listening.
Thank you. Could I call now Mrs Radford, please?
Thank you, Chairman. As reported to the Cabinet, the financial position of the Department at period 4 is forecast to overspend by £13.5 million. The overspend is being driven by increased demand for adult social care services and increased cost of provision post the pandemic. The increase in demand for social care is mostly in 2 areas. The first is domiciliary care, where we have seen an increase of over 20% in the number of people requiring care over the last 18 months, and an increase in the average amount of care each person receives, resulting in an additional 5,000 hours of care being delivered each week. I would like to congratulate our home care providers on meeting this challenge, but it is placing an extraordinary pressure on the sector's ability to continue to meet the ever-increasing demands. The cost of the council of this increase is about 11 million. The second area of significant pressure this year is in residential care services, where there has been a 70% increase in the number of people requiring temporary care placements. This increase in temporary placements is partly due to the demand for home care outstripping the supply available, and therefore people being placed in 24-hour care as an interim solution. The increase in the number of placements equates to around 3 million additional cost, in addition to which the average cost of care has increased, which also adds a further 3 million pressure. You know, millions don't sound much, do they, when you say it quickly? The overall increase in demand is largely being driven by changes to hospital discharge practice, which were introduced through the pandemic and have continued thereafter. The health system is under significant pressure to reduce backlogs of treatment and to meet the needs of people who have not been able to attend for treatment, which again places further pressure on social care. That being said, local NHS partners are aware of the difficulties faced by the Council and are supporting our efforts to address them as a whole health and care system. To that end, the National Health Service in Leicestershire is making available 5 million of additional funding to support adult social care in the county, for which we are very grateful. The department is working to address these issues through enhanced management controls, reviews of care arrangements and cost controls, and is beginning to make some headway in stabilising the position. We hope to see the forecast overspend begin to reduce in the coming months, but it is likely that the demand and cost of pressures will not be reduced entirely in this financial year. These figures are for period 4, and I was assured this morning at the lead members meeting that period 5 is looking more positive. Having said that, over the last 18 months, 54 new accommodations in 7 locations have been opened. This is in spite of the pandemic, which has limited our staff and building resources. We have allocated 10 million to spend on supported living investments, and we have spent 5 million so far across these 54 new accommodations. Our latest investments are New Ashby Court in Loughborough, Copton Ash in Northfield, Hollow Road in Anstey and Forest Road in Loughborough, which all provide independent living flats to support adults with learning disabilities or mental health difficulties. We also carried out improvements to the trees in Hinckley and is now a respite facility which I visited recently. And I must take this opportunity to thank John Wilson and his team for excellent work and trying to keep the budget as best it can during this pandemic. Thank you.
Thank you. Could I now call Mr Walsh, please?
Thank you, Chairman. I'd like to welcome the position statement by the lead member for resources. It's certainly not a pretty picture, and I think it's something to give us all concern. But my particular interest is a statement that Councillor Brecon made about children's services, and as spokesperson for the Lib Dem group, Councillor Brecon quite rightly points out the size of the costs that are associated with children's social care and special educational needs. But then at the end of his sentence, he says there is little news on their respective reforms. I just wonder whether Councillor Brecon could give us a little flavour of what reforms he thinks might be coming down the path. Thank you.
Thank you. Could I call Mr Meyer, please?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I welcome this statement, and I welcome actually what the lead member for adult social care has said, Councillor Radford has said regarding the cuts or the savings that we need to find. It's become a big thing, but I tell you what, it wasn't a big thing in our adult social care meeting until I raised it, until I said, in the small print there's £14 million worth of overspend here. And how we are going to account for it. The year's nearly over. You know, in budgeting terms, we're halfway through. The other half will be spent soon. So how are we going to claw it back? And, you know, I don't want to take the credit for it because I think we've got a fantastic nucleus of a great committee there, led by Mr Richardson. But what was interesting was the officers listened and the lead member listened. Councillor Radford listened, because what came out of it was this presentation that we had on Monday detailing exactly what the issues were in the department, because no way was that £14 million going to be snuck away in the small print without somebody raising it, and I think members from all sides were concerned in that meeting. Yes, we have pressures, COVID pressures, but regardless of COVID, we would have had pressures in adult social care anyway in Leicestershire because of an ageing population. It's interesting how we are going to redevelop and reform adult social care. We'll be looking at it in interest. What I don't want to see is care being taken away, people having less care. I think we should meet all care as need be. And I understand the government have raised the national insurance levy next year, but it won't come into play for us for a couple of years at least. So it'll be interesting how we fill that gap in the next 2 years. And it'll be interesting to see all those reports come through. But it does concern me, £13.5 million shortfall this year. What's it going to be next year? Previously, Mr Brecon can correct me if I'm wrong, we've dipped into the inflation pot because the money we put away for inflation wasn't very high in the last decade, but it's awesomely high now, and the pressures that he's mentioned are great. I don't think we can stomach another 5% council tax rise. The MTFS will show us. But everybody's cost is raising, let's be honest. You can't get fuel at the forecourts, your gas bill's going up, pay isn't going up as much. You might think it is, but it's not if you're a carer or if you're working in hospitality. And I can tell you this now, MTFS coming up, if it shows another 5% pay rise, I'll be very hard pressed to support that kind of motion if it's brought. Thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Parton, please.
Thank you very much to the lead member. I want to expand on that. The situation that we face in adults and communities can be basically compared to the Berlin Wall. So if this is the Berlin Wall, on this side we see words like overspend, concern, savings. But it's worth going over to this side to see what actually happens. For example, severely disabled people given excellent care at the Trees in Hinckley. People with learning problems, and quite profound ones, in new build accommodation in Anstey and also in Loughborough North West. And then we went to see somewhere in Loughborough South for people who are exiting psychiatric units, again purpose built with the promise of more. And then a couple of figures from the meeting we had on Monday. 2,379 people receiving home care. Each week, 119 people exiting hospital, and we have to provide care. And here's another one. During the lockdowns, who kept peace in maximum security prisons like Gartree? Well, it was actually our library service doing an excellent job. And again, Mrs. Radford and I saw at first hand the dedication on scant resources, an amazing job. Now, obviously, we know that history saw the Berlin Wall torn down, and so both sides could see each other. Think of 3 C's with this situation. The first C is competence. We're working very closely with the officers, and there's an exceptionally good team. And each week the figure comes down. Maybe the mainstream media don't want to hear that, but only this morning in another meeting it came down again. The second C is consideration. Every fact about everything we do is considered carefully. All of this is to do with the issues we face. And it's all considered in minutiae detail. And the last is care. Because despite all of these problems, during the dark days of last year and the issues we face now, we never stopped caring. Now, these problems are difficult and they will be with us for quite some time. But 2 things. 1, care will continue to an exceptionally higher standard. And secondly, the key takeaway is the Adults and Communities Department produces good news stories.
Thank you. Could I call Mrs. Taylor, please?
Thank you, Chair. And just to give some more information to Mr. Welsh on his question about the reforms that are being taken. Information has been given to the Overview and Scrutiny Committee about the SEND review and the social care review that the government's undertaking at the moment. And myself and the team at this department have been feeding into both of those reviews quite robustly with our opinions. You're aware that the EHCP plans came into place in 2014, so I think it's now time for a review of that, which is what they're doing. And obviously the funding hasn't followed those reforms, so just to let you, as soon as we get some information on that, we'll pass it on to the committee.
Thank you. Mr. Phillimore, please.
Thank you, Chairman. It's just a point of note for the record. I wasn't anticipating the SEND discussion that's just gone by, so I'll just declare personal interest, if I may. Thank you. My wife's, I think it's for the record, my wife's is employed. Thank you.
Thank you. Move on then to Mr. Richardson, please.
Thank you, Chairman. I just felt as Chairman of the Adults Community Scrutiny Committee, I should respond to the comments Mr. Meir has made about things being snooked through. I would say that I've had the privilege of being Chairman for a couple of years, and between meetings, we have a meeting to discuss what's on the agenda. For the last 2 agenda-setting meetings, neither of the opposition parties have bothered for their spokesman to turn up. Now, those spokespeople are receiving money to turn up at those meetings. That's where we discuss what goes on. That's where we discuss what gets put through. Nothing has been snooked through. Had those people bothered to attend the last agenda-setting meeting, they would have noticed that the portfolio holder, Christine Radford, was there. We were talking about how to do briefings for members, how to get the information out, how to prepare the information for the budget setting coming up. And if I may go back a bit, for those 2 years I've been Chairman, the opposition parties have belittled some of the things we've done, the target operating model, other such factors, which have saved £18 million in 3 years in that budget. Think of the state we would have been in had we not taken those initiatives, had we not moved the council forward. So what I would say to my opposition friends and colleagues is, please take your job seriously, turn up at the meetings, then it won't appear that things are snuck through because you haven't bothered to attend. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you. Thank you. Could I call Mr. Breckham, please? Thank you.
Thank you, Chairman. I think it's interesting, if you look at, 3.4 million this year has been saved by adult and social care. In the first year, the 4-year MTFS, they brought in £3.4 million worth of savings. That's as well as delivering all the services. So Mrs Radford today mentioned the 5 million. We were aware that we were getting additional funding. This really covered the fact they acknowledged the shared responsibility about patients being discharged from hospital early and then going into social care, and we pick up those costs. So the 5 million is welcome. So that is something that we're pleased with. Over the autumn, the early winter, we have both the respending view and the local government financial settlement. We're hoping that takes into account that the grants we get for children and young people's services and adult social care do not cover our costs. We're all aware of it. It's a growing problem. We're not alone. There's over 150 authorities up a tier that are out there in the same position as we are. So conversations in the council chamber are not unique to this council. We are looking at things. There's things like the review of the SEND transport efficiency. Not popular, but we have to look at the use of vehicles, the balance of internal external provision, and the route optimisation. By doing that, we're looking at how we can maximise the use of our money. So I'd say that the SEND, it is a continued pressure. We expect to spend £9 million more this year than we've actually budgeted for. The government have recognised this problem, and again, we're hopeful of additional funding. But we're looking at the county deal, and we're looking at the fair funding, which will continue. I looked at the amount of debt since 2010-11 under Barron's reign, and moving forward, we've made over £220 million worth of savings. Councillor Richardson picked up on the effectiveness, I think, that sometimes we don't get praised for, but £220 million of savings has been made. Unless service demand reduces on what we have or extra funding is found, we are in as difficult a position as we have been, and I think that's what we're trying to address. If I talk to, I think, Mr Mayor, I think we've had no new borrowing at all by this council. We are having to look at the position, but we're proud of that position that we have as well. The Asset Investment Fund has helped that tremendously. That was innovative, and that continues. Can I thank Ted for his comments, useful as always. Mrs Taylor as well for sort of clarification of what's happening in children and young people. And I'd just like to thank Mr Richardson. I think he's highlighted again that we have an efficient system here where we can adopt, and we have, to raise problems that need discussing. So please use them. And thank you, Chairman.
Thank you. Right, could I now move on to the lead member for the post-COVID recovery and ways of working?
Thank you, Chairman. And can I say, firstly say, it's great to see us all back in the chamber today. I think it's the first time in a long time, so it's great that we're back here in person, representing our residents in person. Pre-pandemic, the council was proceeding with a smarter ways of working programme. A business case had been agreed and a gradual rollout and implementation had been planned. As we're all aware, COVID changed that overnight. The majority of office staff have now been working remotely for 18 months. Whilst people have responded very positively, there are great examples of officers demonstrating huge flexibility during this time. We have had concerns about the impact on mental health and well-being, and a significant amount of work has been done to seek to address this. Staff well-being will continue to be an important priority for this authority. Officers have taken the opportunity to use the learnings on how we've worked during the pandemic to refresh the business case. And we're now at a point of starting to move from remote working and recovery into a new long-term hybrid model of working, i.e. a mixture of workplace working and remote working, and using spaces more collaboratively. The business case covers 3 work streams: people, technology and property, and reflects the investment made in technology in optimising our assets, and also ensuring that the right culture is created and embedded. And I welcome the forthcoming scrutiny review panel on the ways of working business case, including the implementation plan. The business case sets out a wide range of anticipated benefits. A few examples are increased rental income, lower sickness absence, positive impact on recruitment, retention and turnover of staff, and improved productivity and better services for all of our residents. Now, I guess the pandemic has kind of forced some changes upon businesses and councils and authorities. And a number of those, I'll just give some examples, are the way we conduct ourselves here. So the average mileage for a member to do a round trip to County Hall is about 23 miles. Now, the briefings we've had online, I felt have been very, very well received, particularly for working members such as myself, who've been able to engage in them far better. So I certainly would like to see more of that activity going on going forward. Indeed, the average age of a member in this chamber is 59. But there are still a lot of working people here, so I'd certainly like to see further reforms in terms of how we operate to ensure that we attract people from all walks of life into public life and to be represented in this chamber. Officers are undertaking some work on how to ensure that services and individual officers remain productive whilst working in a hybrid model, and to find different ways to measure this productivity. There are also systems in place to support leaders and managers in driving that productivity, and I've had extensive meetings with the lead officers in my portfolio to ensure that we are on top of this and making sure that we're still delivering good services for our residents. Finally, it's also worth noting and acknowledging that these new arrangements will directly benefit large parts of our organisation, typically those that are office-based. But there are a significant number of frontline officers that won't be directly impacted, such as home care teams and highway gangs, and I'm sure we'll all send our thanks for the work they've been doing over the last 18 months to keep things going. The new ways of working at the council are evidence of the impact the pandemic has had on how we work and deliver our services. But it's undoubtedly the case that the impact on Leicestershire businesses and employees has been far more challenging. Working with partners and making use of our own resources, the council has done much to help business and employees cope and recover. In the last year, the council has provided over £1 million to businesses, including community pub schemes, I know many in my division benefited from that. Set up initiatives, the new work and skills programme. I was in Loughborough yesterday, seeing the good work that goes on there at Loughborough Library, supporting people upskilling and getting their CVs up to scratch and helping them find work. And also the government's Kickstart programme. But as a place, we know we need to do more. So I've worked hard with our partners and our enterprise partnership to develop a longer-term plan for recovery and growth. When this plan is in place, and when we have clarity on the future role of the LEP, I will report to this council chamber and provide more detailed update on the state of Leicestershire's economy and the progress we have made to return it to full strength.
Thank you. Right. I haven't noticed any hands up. If that's the case, I will move on to our next item. Yes, thank you. Item 6 is the agenda item, report on the Constitution Committee, the report of the Independent Remuneration Panel on Members' Allowance. I invite Mr Rushton to move the motion and Mrs Taylor to second. Thank you.
Chairman, this council, like all councils, has an independent remuneration panel which is commissioned to look at the remuneration of members from time to time. I don't intend to comment on it apart from to move the recommendations.
Thank you. Mrs Taylor.
I'm happy to second the recommendations, Chairman.
Thank you. No comments. Could I have, we accept that paper, is that the overall yes? Thank you. Thank you. Agreed. Thank you very much. Item 12, the agenda, item 7, appointment of parent governor representative to serve on the Children and Families Overview and Security Committee. I invite Mr Shepherd to move the motion and Mr Charlesworth to second. Thank you.
Thank you, Chairman. I move that Mr Robert Martin be appointed as co-opted member of the Children and Families Overview and Scrutiny Committee or other appropriate scrutiny committee dealing with education for the period ending May 2025.
Thank you. Mr Charlesworth.
I second the appointment.
Thank you. Is everybody in favour of what's been published on the paper? Yes? Agreed? Thank you. Right, we move on to motion 8 on the agenda. Notice of motion. The revised motion. With the consent of the council, Mr Hunt will move the revised motion on the order paper on which Mr Bolter will second. Mr Bolter may wish to reserve his remarks. Thank you.
Thank you, Chair. I start by moving the motion item 8A, the revised motion on the order paper. And first of all, I'd like to thank members and officers for the very inspiring work that's been going on since we moved the declaration of climate emergency in this chamber some 2 years ago. I think the County Council's responded superbly and continues to do so. The Council's reduced its carbon emissions on all fronts, and in its second tranche, we're now beginning to tackle the wider community. And we have to bear in mind that the emissions from County Hall and the activities of the County Council are probably less than 5% of the total emissions that we need to reduce across the county. In fact, I think it's more like 1%. So the vast majority of work that we have to do is outside this county council amongst the community, and it includes changes in behaviour and the way we go to work, the way we live, the way we travel, and the way we heat our homes, and all that sort of thing. And that's really where this motion began, because we feel we're now at a roadblock, some of us feel, we're now at a roadblock in the County Council, that there are so many issues out there that we need to tackle. And just as an example that actually came up the other week in Scrutiny Commission, someone asked, you know, how do we ensure in the local plans that we get more environmental heating systems or better travel systems within new developments? And the answer came back, I thought quite reasonably from the officers, well, the council can't actually do a lot about this except perhaps choose where it puts developments. Well, choosing where you put developments is certainly a good idea unless you happen to live next door to it. We know about that, those problems. But there really aren't much powers and very little leadership from the central government in this regard. And if devolution is wanted anywhere, it's wanted in this area. Our original motion was a little bit hard on the Prime Minister, and we all know what a difficult job he's got, and he has delivered speeches, he has made promises. I've got the 10 promises here, actually. I might go through them in a moment if I have time, Chair. But his approach to this is like every other approach that we seem to get from Downing Street, whether it's social care, Brexit, levelling up, The words are all there, but the actions don't follow. The latest one was, of course, in the UN in New York. Was it last week or the week before? When he got up and likened climate change to Kermit going green. And I think that was supposed to be a joke, but there wasn't anybody else in the auditorium that quite understood that. There are much more serious issues. There's a serious issue of cost, and we all understand the issues of cost, but we also understand that the costs will be greater the longer we leave the measures that we've got to implement, whether it's in flooding or whether it's in heating, or indeed whether it's the question of immigration, because a lot of the effects of climate change are not necessarily going on in Germany, where they've had serious floods, yes, but in places across Africa, across the Sahel, and those people will be knocking on our door to come and live here when we have made their environments impossible to live in. It's a really serious issue. So the main thing that this motion set out to do was to alert the Prime Minister in particular of the serious issues we've got in local government, that we can go so far, particularly in our own environment here, but out there in the community. We want to do that, but the means to do that aren't available to us at the moment. Maybe they'll come through from the super mayor, which we're thinking of appointing, and the money that comes through from that, I don't know. But it needs to be earmarked and it needs to be urgent. I mentioned at the beginning that a lot of this is a question of how we live our lives and attitudes and so on. So the other thing that we wanted to do with this motion was to hold, and I put it very broadly, as an event, but it could be citizens' assembly. And I think there are problems with that. Yeah, it could be a festival across the county in celebration of what we've done and looking forward. But I'm perfectly sure that the officers are much more adept and aware of how to approach the community in that respect. But I'm sure we would all be behind them should we have such an event perhaps next year. So with those few words, I can come back and answer any questions if I'm allowed. I don't think I am.
Don't worry, I will help and guide you. Could I now call Mr. Bolter to second, please? Thank you.
Thank you, Chair. Yes, I second the motion, reserve my comments, if I may.
Thank you. Could I now call Mr. Payne, please?
Many thanks, Chairman. And firstly, can I thank, as lead member for the Environment Agenda and Climate Change here at Leicestershire County Council, Max and Bill Bolter, for bringing this motion, albeit amended. We did take it through the Conservative group, and we did find it necessary to make some severe amendments to the original motion, because frankly there's much supposition within that. But nonetheless, I know that Mr. Hunt and Mr. Bolter come from a genuinely passionate place when it comes to the environment agenda, and hence why they have brought this motion here to Council today. I totally agree that the County Council for the last 2 years, and I thank Mr. Hunt for recognising the leadership we've taken on this agenda from, it could be argued, a standing start, frankly. We've done much to take stock of our own carbon emissions here across County Hall, and we're on a journey, and we feel confident that we will reach our target of net zero in that respect. But as the motion quite rightly identifies, the wider emissions across Leicestershire will be somewhat more challenging without government intervention. I do happen to disagree with Mr. Hunt in that I think the Prime Minister has done a huge amount. We have a leader who's willing to speak about the environment agenda, and I'm not sure if you compare him to many of the world leaders, past or present, that there are too many of them out there that are willing to stand on podiums and actually speak and raise this issue at the highest level. So I think our Prime Minister, Mr. Johnson, should be commended for that. Of course, the UK will be hosting COP26 in the first couple of weeks of November this year, and much of the work we're doing as a small little county council in the middle of the country will be following what is said there, and I can commit as lead member that there will be events forthcoming from that COP26. We already have planned events, but I can assure you in 2022 there will be more events from here at Leicestershire County Council. Happy to support the motion, so is the Conservative Group. Thank you, Chairman.
Thank you. Could I now call on Dr Felton, please?
Yeah, thank you very much, Chairman. We've all seen on the news horror stories from the heat dome over British Columbia and half of Canada when temperatures got up to 50 degrees. I well know that area because my mother's lived there for 50 years, so I know lots of friends over there who really, really were struggling with that phenomenal heat in a very temperate area. I mean, it's similar to what it should be around here in the UK. We've seen the fires that have devastated every year the hills around California, and then the flooding we've had recently across Europe, China, all sorts of places. But it's all a bit distant, isn't it? We've seen, okay, I'm not sure whether the volcano in Las Palmas is climate change, but certainly the other things are. And it's all very distant now. It's on the news, it's on that little box in the corner that flickers. But when it comes really home to you, I know there are areas in Leicestershire that have flooding, but my little villages of Kibworth don't have flooding or haven't normally. And then on the 20th of July, early evening, there was I sitting quite happily in the house, and I suddenly started to rain. It'd been a lovely hot day, and I'd been driving around and my car had the window open. I looked out the window and suddenly spotted the car window was wide open, my driver's door. So I thought, oh, better go and close it. Open the front door to get to the car. Between me and about as far away as Rosebery is now, was my car. I was soaked just getting that far. So I sat in the car for a while, having closed the window, and thought, oh, well, that's that then. I better wait here for a bit. It'll stop in a minute, won't it? No. So I dashed back to the house, soaked again, and sat there from then on for about an hour, just watching the weather unfold. It became quite a newsworthy episode, because not only did it start hailing, but the hailstones became the size of golf balls. Over 2,500 vehicles in the two Kibworths were damaged by those hailstones. There are still people waiting in line and waiting on a waiting list to get their cars undented. There is an enormous amount of insurance claims for, in some cases, cars have been written off. My own car has a few dents on it, but that's because it's French. The German ones apparently were really badly dented. It's just the metal they make, obviously. But I've no idea. But it really did wake up myself to the fact that, okay, it was a very unusual thunderstorm. I checked the next week or so over the software we have, Tableau, to see how many people had reported, particularly drains and flooding in my area. There were 14 reports of blocked drains, which is highly unusual. I mean, we might get them here and there, but this is 14 within 3 days. And in fact, one of the pictures on the news, in fact, was of flooding pouring down one of the streets into a house at the bottom. Happened to be my house about 40 years ago. That's where I lived. We never had floods in there. But it just shows, and it was, the drains were completely clogged, detritus and leaves from all the stuff being washed down. It's when it comes home to you. That's the first time, I have to say, probably in my life, I'd realised just how much one needs to be very careful about what is happening, about the climate, not just locally, but across the world. Thanks, Chairman.
Thank you. Could I call Mr. Bolter now to... Oh, sorry, I've not got you down. Don't worry. Yes, by all means.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Sorry I came in late there. I just wanted to mention a couple of things. I support the motion, obviously, but it's important to identify some of the things that the county is doing, but also some of the concerns that our residents have. Obviously, climate change is a national, global issue, bigger than this county, but on the doorsteps when I was campaigning previously, but recently now, with the movement to electrical vehicles, a lot of people where I represent live in terrace housing, and they're saying, well, what are we going to do about charging points? So, you know, yes, the global warming and the heat dome over North America, but actually practical things on our doorsteps that they want the help of the council to do. So that's one of those things that we will be raising, I think, as we get closer and closer to 2030, of how we're going to charge all those electrical vehicles in terrace streets. and what the infrastructure is going to be. And we don't have the answers at the moment, but we need to quickly develop those answers, because those 7-8 years are just going to fly by. So that's one of those things. And the second thing I want to mention is the County Council actually, a lot of the houses that I represent are in Class D or Class E in the EPCs, but the County Council's got that warm homes grant on the website where they can apply, and their partnership with E.ON. And I know some of the residents in Loughborough East have been successful with that one, or are going through the process of that. And I think it's very important when gas prices are rising, but heating your home and winter's coming, that we try and provide this kind of support, because it's all good, well, and saying it's a national issue, but we try to make it local as possible and help our residents as much as possible. And the most common thing is people trying to heat their homes and keep it warm, and electrical cars, because that's what's coming immediately down the future. And the third one I was going to say was gas boilers, but I think that's moved now a bit further down the line, because people worried, you know, if they can't heat their homes with gas, what will they be able to heat it with in our areas? Thank you.
Thank you. Could I now call Mr. Bolter? Thank you.
Thanks, Chairman. Yes. I, like Mr. Hunt, agree to the amendment to the motion to get it through. It's important we go together, not just politics, all together, to represent the people of Leicestershire on this very important issue. How will the future generation look upon us if we didn't take it really seriously, as much as we can, to improve the environment for future generations? Looking around the chamber, it won't affect us so much, but our children, grandchildren and future grandchildren, it'll affect them greatly. We talked about changes in the environment. Well, look around our coastline. Look at Norfolk, for instance. Round Haysborough, it was on television the other night, the coastline being washed away, those communities being lost. We must go forward as quickly as possible to improve things as much as possible. One thing I'd like to do, if at all possible, for this county council to push all of us for improvement to the building regulations for new build properties, to improve the insulation, to improve water harvesting, to improve electricity generation. The time to do it is on new build. Big estates can be done far more cheaply than trying to retrofit existing properties. Let's do that now and move forward. We've got a chance to do this. I know we're not part of the LGA anymore, but I'm sure the leader has got contacts in high places, and I'm sure other local authorities will also like to have building regulations improved. I know the building industry won't like to do it because they say, well, it's cost us money. But when you look at the amount of money some of these big housing builders make at the end of the year, it would be a very small dent in their profit margin to actually do these improvements. But it will increase the environment very greatly. I'm pleased to see we're planting more trees within the county. We've got our own ideas what tree plantation we should do and what species we should plant, that come out of another committee. So I'm pleased we can all go together, but one thing I'd like to bring up, and I'm sure that the lead member for transport will look at it, is that coordination of highway works. I mean, in my division at the moment, in South Wixton, we've got a cable being laid. It's called traffic hold-up throughout Wixton, South Wixton and Glenparva. For over a week, all these vehicles are standing there, engines ticking away, causing more and more pollution. There's roadworks further down the road, so it's not coordinated. Traffic can't move. It moves a little bit, then it stops, another road hold up, here we go again. And it goes on for up to an hour and a half in the morning, hour and a half at night. It's something that can be avoided with a bit of pre-planning and thinking about, so all the roadworks don't happen on the same roads at the same time to ease the flow of traffic. But I'm sure that the member for transport will look at that and perhaps report back to a future meeting. With that, Chair, I thank all members for supporting the motion. I'm sure they all will, and we can move forward to get a better environment for our future generations. Thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Hunt, you have the right of reply if you wish to exercise it.
No, that's fine.
Thank you very much. Right, I'll now put the motion to the vote. All those in favour, please show. Unanimous. Yes, thank you very much. That was unanimous. Thank you. Can we move on now to the Prevention Service of Public Health Cancer? Mr Mullaney will move the motion on the order paper, which Mrs Richardson will second.
Thank you, Mr Chairman. Cancer affects virtually every family in Leicestershire and the rest of the country, and Cancer Research UK do great work to highlight the issues around cancer and to promote work to reduce the number of deaths from cancer each year. Cancer Research UK have been encouraging local authorities to support a motion supporting prevention services, which I brought to this meeting today, which I hope that the meeting can support. Smoking cigarettes still accounts for an estimated 80,000 early deaths in England a year. Obesity is estimated to account for 30,000 early deaths a year, and alcohol 7,000 early deaths a year, and smoking remains the main cause of preventable cancer despite reductions in the number of people smoking in recent years. And it's also estimated to cost local authority the effects of smoking over £800 million in social care costs a year. Whilst the uplift in spending on the public health grant this year of £46 million is welcome, since 2015-2016 there has effectively been a 24% or nearly a quarter real terms cut in public health spending. These reductions have a significant effect on public health services and financing, and a relatively small saving can have a false economy, as it can lead to more costs in the long term if more people develop avoidable illnesses. Here in Leicestershire, there are around 4,000 cases of cancer a year, and sadly around 2,000 deaths from cancer in Leicestershire a year. Deaths from cancer can be reduced through preventative measures, a combination of ceasing smoking, reducing alcohol intake, and a healthy weight is estimated to reduce the chances of developing cancer by around 4 in 10. So with the support of Cancer Research, this motion calls on the government to provide increased and sustained funding for public health work, which should help to reduce the number of people in Leicestershire and the rest of the country who sadly develop cancer and in many cases sadly die of cancer. So I hope the Council can support this motion today. Thank you.
Thank you. Could I call upon Mrs Richardson, please, to second?
Thank you, Mr Chairman. I'm happy to second the motion today and thank Mr Mullaney for bringing this forward. Sorry, microphone problem. It is based on the call for better public health funding from Cancer Research UK, and I don't think any of us here would disagree. I'd just like to remind everyone that the Council does not have responsibility for all health prevention. The NHS, LPT, etc. do have responsibilities such as testing and screening programmes. We're all very aware of the financial pressure on local government, and I will say that the Public Health Department here at the Council have led the way in innovation in service design and in securing efficiency from commissioned services. However, with increased funding, we can do more. The more we do as a prevention, the longer people will stay healthy and well in their communities, rather than ending up in hospital care or living with chronic health conditions. And I think COVID has shown the need to recognise the importance of the public health grant for the services in the communities, and therefore support this motion. Thank you.
Thank you. Mrs Taylor, did you indicate you wish to speak?
Thank you, Mr Chairman. I just want to mention a member of our very good youth parliament that we have here. There's a young 15-year-old that's been working on a project to produce a booklet to highlight to young people the symptoms to look for in cancers that affect young people more. And I think, as Mrs Richardson has just said, we all need to work together in partnership to do prevention as much as we can. It's just not down to the local authority, but it covers a vast array. And if we all work together, then to raise the awareness, to look out for symptoms, and hopefully we can start to prevent some of these cancers. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Mr Mullaney, you have the right to reply if you wish to exercise that.
Just to thank Mrs Richardson and Mrs Taylor for their comments, and happy to move to a vote.
Thank you very much. I will now put the motion to the vote. All those in favour, raise your hands, please. Is everybody? Yeah. Thank you. That was unanimous. Thank you. That then concludes our meeting. I want to thank you all for your attendance, and particularly those who've contributed to our meeting today, and wish you all well and a safe journey home. Thank you all very much indeed. Thank you.